So the last piece that we talked about in the unit number 1 was how to do calculations and measurements properly. So things like significant figures and stuff like that. So we're going to add that to the bottom of the sheet here. So calculation and measuring. So it's a little bit of like a side unit piece. There's a few things that are the most important to remember. When you're measuring something, you want to measure all of the known numbers plus one estimated number. So all known plus one estimated when measuring. For scientific notation, we'll give an example here. So you might need scientific notation if you have an answer that requires a certain number of significant figures. So something like 42,000, if I turned this into scientific notation, I would take the decimal place and I would move it over, so I only had one non-zero number in front of it, and it would become 4.2 times 10 to the power of however many times I moved the decimal place, which in this case is 4. And then the last piece was significant figures. So we also talked about the difference between accuracy and precision, if you need to look back in your notes and check the difference between those two things. Accuracy is how close you are to a true value. Precision is how repeatable something is. So significant figures. So all non-zero numbers always count. That kind of goes without saying, but we'll add it in here anyway. So all non-zero numbers count. So 7s and 2s and 5s, etc. Always. Okay, then we have all these fancy rules about zeros. So the first one is that leading zeros never count. So that's like if you have a number where you have 0.005, the zeros in front of it don't count. Then you have trapped zeros. So a trapped zero is a zero that's between two non-zero numbers, and they always count. So if you have 502, then you would have 3 significant figures. So leading zeros never count, trapped zeros always count. Then trailing zeros, so these are zeros that come after non-zero numbers, count only if there is a decimal place. And so when we use these rules, helps us figure out how many significant figures we get in our answers. So for final answers, don't round or count sig figs until you get to the very end of a question. Then for your final answer, you want to round to the lowest number of significant figures. Going to underline that if. Okay, so that's a bit of a review of everything from the first unit. Now you've also received a handout of notes that has, it's called in-class review questions, and it has a page of a few practice questions for each unit. So it looks sort of like this at the top. I don't want to show you guys all the answers, but now that we've gone over unit number 1, take 5 or 10 minutes and answer questions 1 and 2 to practice going over identifying products of a reaction, what type of reaction, writing out balanced reaction equations. When you're finished that, then move on to unit number 2. But it's good to do some practice right away after we've kind of reminded ourselves about all this stuff.